Spring in Chicago arrived late. By mid-April, flowers were finally beginning to bloom in the gardens of the old wooden houses in the Oak Park neighborhood. Linda Washington parked her car in the hospital parking lot, closed her eyes for a moment, and took a deep breath. After finishing her 12-hour shift, she gathered her strength in her tired body and opened the car door. Her daily routine as a pediatrician was always challenging. Today, she had been busy treating 3 severely ill children, and was finally able to head home. Taking out her smartphone, she saw a message from her husband, Michael. "Dinner for the kids is ready. I'll keep yours warm, so no need to rush. Love you." Linda smiled. Michael worked as an engineer at an IT company, but always put his family first. Their marriage wasn't wealthy, but it was filled with love. Their 2 children, 10-year-old Emma and 8-year-old Jason, were the treasures of their lives. When she arrived home, she could hear the sound of the television and children's laughter coming from the living room. As soon as she opened the door, Jason ran to her and clung to her. "Mom, I got an A+ on my science test at school today." "That's wonderful." "Congratulations, Jason," Linda said, stroking her son's head. Emma turned around from the sofa and said in a composed voice, "Welcome home, Mom. I finished my homework." Her 10-year-old daughter seemed to be already standing at the threshold of adolescence. In the kitchen, Michael was putting away dishes. When she spotted him, Linda approached her husband and gave him a light kiss. "How was your day?" Michael asked. "Busy. But I managed," Linda answered with a smile. "And yours?" "Just an ordinary day. A new project might be starting, but the details aren't confirmed yet." Linda listened to her children's school stories while eating her dinner that had been warmed in the microwave. This everyday warmth soothed her fatigue. After dinner, Linda noticed an envelope placed on the kitchen counter. It was from her parents. "When did this arrive?" she asked Michael. "This afternoon. It was in the mailbox." Linda opened the envelope and took out the thick invitation inside. It was an invitation to her parents' Helen and Robert's Christmas party, an annual event. "It's an invitation to my parents' Christmas party," Linda sighed. "Ah, that time of year again," Michael's voice carried a hint of tension. Linda's parents were a former university professor and a successful real estate agent who lived in an upscale neighborhood in suburban Chicago. They placed great importance on social status and were always conscious of how others perceived them. Since childhood, Linda had felt unable to meet their expectations. Even becoming a doctor wasn't seen as successful enough in her parents' eyes. In contrast, Linda's sister Carol was married to Brad, who had started a real estate business with her father's help, and lived as a stay-at-home mom. Carol's children, Ava and Ryan, attended expensive private schools. Looking at the invitation, Linda recalled previous annual parties. Surrounded by her parents' friends dressed in luxury brands, she and her family always felt out of place. Her parents never directly criticized, but their true feelings were transparent in questions like, "Why don't you move to a better school district?" or "Any plans to send the children to private school?" "Do we have to go?" Michael gently asked. Linda shook her head. "We'll go. With the children. It's a family tradition." She took out her cell phone and sent a reply to her parents. "Thanks for the invitation. We'll definitely attend. Is there anything we should bring?" Her mother's reply came immediately. "No need to bring anything. Just note that the dress code is somewhat formal. Since Carol's family will be there too, please make sure the children dress properly." Linda read the message and closed her eyes briefly. It was the same implicit pressure every year. Michael placed his hand on her shoulder. "It's okay, Linda. We can just be ourselves." Linda smiled up at her husband. "Thank you. That's true." Listening to the children playing in the living room, Linda reminded herself that her true wealth was right here in this house. Still, the childhood wish to be acknowledged by her parents remained in a corner of her heart. On Christmas Eve, Linda's home was filled with warm lights and the aroma of cooking. In the kitchen, Linda was finishing baking a traditional apple pie. It was a recipe she had learned from her mother Helen, and the scent of cinnamon and nutmeg wafted all the way to the living room. Mom, I wrapped the presents we're taking to Grandma's house. In the living room, Emma was tying gold ribbons on bright red wrapping paper. Beside her, Jason was earnestly coloring a handmade Christmas card. They look beautiful, Linda smiled, peeking at the children's work. The sound of the front door opening was heard, and Michael came in, shaking snow off his coat. I cleared all the snow off the car. Driving should be easier tomorrow. Thank you, Linda kissed her husband. The kids are working hard on preparations too. Michael entered the living room and put his arms around the children's shoulders, praising their work. These are wonderful creations. Grandma and Grandpa will be delighted. Mom, do you think Grandma will display the picture I drew? Emma asked hopefully. She had carefully placed her watercolor winter landscape in a tube. During their last visit, her grandmother had merely glanced at her drawing and said, "That's nice." Of course, she'll be pleased, Linda smiled in response, though she felt uncertain inside. Her mother had always said she only displayed real art. As the night deepened, after putting the children to bed, Linda and Michael relaxed in the living room with hot chocolate. I feel a bit nervous thinking about tomorrow, Linda admitted honestly. Michael took her hand. It'll be fine. It's just one day. We'll be back home by night. I know. But my parents' parties always make me feel. Linda searched for words. Pressured. Especially in front of the children. The children are wonderful. And you're a wonderful mother, Michael said quietly. That's all that matters. Linda leaned against her husband and whispered, "Thank you." The next morning, the snow gleamed brightly under the sun. Linda woke up early, prepared breakfast, and enjoyed watching the children open their gifts. Emma was engrossed in her new science book, and Jason sat on the floor with the dinosaur model kit he had wanted. Now, let's get ready to go to Grandma and Grandpa's house, Linda said, and the children hurriedly began gathering their presents. As Linda was making final preparations, her cell phone vibrated on the table. Looking at the screen, she saw a message from her mother. We've decided to spend this year with just family. Let's meet another time. Linda stared at the screen, confused. She read it several times but couldn't understand the message's meaning. She immediately called her mother, but there was only a ringing tone with no answer. What's wrong? Michael entered the kitchen. A message from my mother, Linda showed him the phone. I don't understand. Just family, are we not family? Michael frowned as he read the message. That's strange. Try calling again. Linda called again, but this time it went to voicemail. She tried her father's cell phone with the same result. What should I do? Linda's voice trembled. Stay calm, Michael placed his hand on her shoulder. Maybe there's some misunderstanding. Linda took a deep breath. What do I tell the children? They were looking forward to it. We have to be honest, but gentle. When they returned to the living room, the children were already wearing their coats and holding their presents. Linda sat down in front of them and began explaining gently. There's been a change of plans, she chose her words carefully. Grandma contacted me saying they've changed today's plans. It looks like we'll be spending Christmas just by ourselves today. But you said we'd see Grandma and Grandpa. Jason's voice trembled, and tears welled up in his eyes. I know, I'm sorry, Linda hugged her son. I don't fully understand either. But we'll make sure to see them another day. Emma silently observed the situation. At 10 years old, she sensed that something wasn't right. Mom, are Grandma and Grandpa angry? No, I don't think so, Linda answered, though she herself wasn't sure of her answer. Michael joined them. There might be some misunderstanding. But we can have a wonderful Christmas right here. I'll roast a turkey, and we can all decorate together. The children calmed down a bit, but couldn't hide their disappointment at suddenly losing the time they had expected to spend with their grandparents. Jason in particular kept looking out the window, checking if his grandparents' car was coming. That evening, after the children had gone to bed, Linda sat on the sofa and began checking social media. She had been waiting for contact from her parents all day, but there was nothing. She had also sent a message to Carol, but it was only marked as read with no reply. As she scrolled, suddenly posts from her parents' account appeared on the screen. Linda gasped. There were photos of a lavish Christmas party being uploaded one after another. Her parents' living room was decorated magnificently, her father held a glass of expensive whiskey, and her mother was smiling in an elegant dress. And there were Carol and Brad, their children, and also uncles, aunts, and her parents' close friends. The caption read, "Best Family Christmas. A special day with loved ones." Linda stared at the screen, feeling a pain in her chest. Only her family had been excluded from this list of loved ones. What's wrong? Michael noticed her expression and came closer. Linda silently handed him the phone. As Michael frowned while looking at the photos, Emma came down the stairs. "I'm thirsty," she said, sitting next to Linda. Then she saw the screen that was still open. "Mom," Emma whispered. "Aren't we family?" At that moment, tears welled up in Linda's eyes. All she could do was hug her daughter. Michael sat beside them, gently embracing his family. "We are family, Emma," Linda said, stroking her daughter's hair. "The best family." After taking Emma back to her room, Linda gripped her phone with trembling hands. Her heart was filled with a mixture of anger and sadness. She had always tried to meet her parents' expectations. But today, they had sent a clear message. Linda Washington and her family were not part of the real Anderson family. 3 months passed. Spring in Chicago was still far away, and the March sky was covered with gray clouds. Linda had kept contact with her parents to a minimum. After Christmas, she had received several apologetic messages from her mother, but Linda had not responded. After the new year, her sister Carol had also sent an email asking to make up, but Linda had politely declined. "Sometimes it's important to keep some distance," Linda had explained to Emma and Jason. The children were confused by their grandparents' sudden rejection, but gradually adapted to their new normal. Linda's family had begun creating new traditions of their own, like weekend hiking and board game tournaments. One Wednesday evening, Linda returned home exhausted after a long day at the hospital. As she parked her car in the driveway, she saw a familiar figure on the porch. It was her sister, Carol. "Linda," Carol called to her as soon as she got out of the car. Her expression was downcast, and her usual confident demeanor was subdued. "Carol? What's going on?" Linda asked in surprise. The last time she had seen her sister was before that Christmas. "I need to talk to you," Carol began. "It's about our parents, isn't it?" Linda responded calmly. The two entered the house and sat in the living room. Michael and the children hadn't come home yet. Carol took a sip of coffee and sighed. "Things have become complicated," Carol began, choosing her words carefully. "Our parents' social reputation is in free fall." Linda listened silently. "The Christmas incident has spread in the church community," Carol continued. "Someone saw our parents' social media post and started asking questions, wondering why your family was the only one missing." According to Carol, their parents were beginning to be labeled as despicable grandparents who discriminate against their grandchildren. Long-cherished friendships were cracking, and their father's position in the Rotary Club was in jeopardy. "And?" Linda asked, controlling her emotions. "That's not all," Carol frowned. "I was preparing for the 50th anniversary party Mother was planning for our parents. But when I learned the truth about Christmas..." She paused. "I was furious. I unilaterally canceled the party plans." "I didn't know they were excluding your family," Carol confessed. "Our parents decided suddenly that morning. They said, Linda's family doesn't fit our lifestyle." Linda felt a pain in her chest. It hurt to hear her parents' true feelings, but at the same time, it confirmed what she had felt in her heart all along. "So, what do you want from me now?" Linda asked. Carol took a deep breath. "Things have gotten worse." According to her explanation, their father Robert's real estate company had fallen victim to a major fraud. A con artist posing as an investor had proposed a high-value real estate development plan, and Robert had invested a large sum of money. Last week, it was discovered that the con artist had disappeared, and all the funds were gone. Brad's company was also a victim of the same fraud. Carol's voice trembled. We're really struggling financially. Linda was shocked. She had always thought her father's company was rock solid. He had always prided himself on his financial success. But there's more. Carol's expression darkened further. Mother was recently diagnosed with early-stage dementia. Linda gasped. What? The doctor says a stable family environment can help slow the progression of symptoms, Carol said quietly. Linda, Mother has been getting confused more often lately. And she often mentions you. Linda silently looked out the window. It had started to rain. Our parents want to see you, Carol continued. Especially Mother, she wants your advice, since you're a doctor. And about Father's company, Linda completed the sentence. Carol nodded. Father is embarrassed. But he really needs help. Linda stood up and headed to the kitchen. While boiling water, she confronted her complex emotions. Anger, sadness, and concern. She was genuinely worried about her mother's health. And she was also Emma and Jason's grandmother. When was Mother diagnosed? Linda asked as she put in tea leaves. 2 weeks ago, Carol answered. At first, she didn't want to tell anyone. But as the symptoms worsened, Linda returned to the living room with mugs. Carol, I'll be honest. When our parents excluded my family, it deeply hurt me, Linda said quietly. Especially the children. Emma and Jason didn't do anything wrong. Carol nodded. I know. I truly feel sorry about it. It's not you who should apologize, but our parents, Linda said. But hearing about Mother's health concerns me. Just then, the front door opened, and Michael and the children came home. Emma and Jason looked surprised to see Carol. Hello, Aunt Carol, Emma said politely. Hi, Jason waved awkwardly. Kids, I need to talk with Aunt Carol. Could you take a snack and play in your rooms? Linda asked gently. After the children went upstairs, Michael entered the living room. Carol, he greeted calmly. Linda briefly explained the situation to her husband. Michael listened quietly, occasionally nodding. So, your parents need help now, Michael finally said. That's right, Carol answered. I'm doing what I can, but we need Linda's medical knowledge and calm judgment. Michael looked at Linda. His eyes held the question, what will you do? Linda took a deep breath. Carol, tell our parents. They can come to our house tomorrow evening. I'll hear what they have to say. Relief spread across Carol's face. Thank you, Linda. But I have one condition, Linda said with a serious expression. I want our parents to apologize directly to my children. The wounds Emma and Jason received won't heal easily. Carol nodded. I'll tell them. After she left, Linda and Michael sat in silence for a long time. Are you sure about this? Michael finally asked. I don't know, Linda answered honestly. But if Mother really has dementia, for the children's sake too, I have to do something. Michael took her hand. I'll support your decision. Whatever it is. That night, Linda couldn't sleep. The thought of facing her parents tomorrow made her chest tighten. At 6 o'clock the next evening, Linda stood by the window, watching for her parents' car to appear on the street. Michael was in the living room with the children, gently explaining the situation. Grandma and Grandpa are coming today. We need to talk about something, Michael said gently. Won't they kick us out again? Jason asked anxiously. His innocent question pained Linda's heart. Jason, Emma admonished her brother. You shouldn't say it like that. Emma, at just 10 years old, was beginning to understand the subtleties of the situation. Linda was sometimes surprised by her daughter's maturity. It's going to be okay, Linda returned to the living room and sat in front of the children. Grandma and Grandpa are coming to apologize for what happened at Christmas. They want to talk to you directly. Really? Jason's eyes widened. But Emma's expression was skeptical. Why so suddenly? Linda hesitated for a moment. She was wrestling with how to explain her mother's illness to the children. Grandma isn't feeling very well right now, she chose her words carefully. And being with people she cares about is important for Grandma. The doorbell rang, and the four looked at each other. Michael stood up and said, "I'll get it," as he headed to the door. The door opened, and tense voices could be heard. Linda took a deep breath and stood up. When her parents entered the living room, she was surprised by their appearance. Robert had slumped shoulders, his usually dignified posture gone. His face showed fatigue, and his eyes behind his glasses were downcast. Helen had tried to dress elegantly, but her makeup was slightly smudged, and her hands trembled slightly. "Linda." Helen's voice was weak. "Mom, Dad," Linda greeted them calmly. "Please sit down." Her parents sat on the sofa. Emma and Jason sat facing them, looking at their grandparents with a mixture of curiosity and caution. "Please hear us out," Robert pleaded in a trembling voice. "Please, Linda," Helen added. Linda took a deep breath and looked at them. "Don't you have something to say to the children?" Robert and Helen exchanged glances and nodded. Helen turned to face the children. "Emma, Jason," she said softly. "Grandma and Grandpa made a very foolish mistake. We're truly sorry for hurting you," Robert added with a serious expression. Emma remained silent, looking at her grandparents with a blank expression. Jason, however, asked frankly, "Why didn't you invite us?" A heavy silence fell over the room. Helen and Robert exchanged glances again. Finally, Helen answered in a small voice. This is embarrassing but..." She was searching for words. "We didn't want to show our friends Linda's family's modest lifestyle." Linda gasped at these words. She hadn't expected such a frank confession. "Modest?" Jason asked in confusion. "What's that?" "It means..." Robert tried to explain, but Emma interrupted. "It means they were embarrassed because we're not rich." Emma's voice was quiet but sharp. "But we're happy." Tears welled up in Helen's eyes. "Emma, you're right. We were living with the wrong values." "Children, would you go play in your rooms for a while?" Linda asked gently. "The adults need to talk." Emma and Jason reluctantly went upstairs. When they were out of sight, Linda turned to face her parents. "It's good to know the real reason," her voice was calm. "At least I appreciate your honesty." "We were wrong," Robert bowed his head. "We're truly sorry for hurting you and the children." "Your family is wonderful," Helen said through tears. "We just failed to see the value." Looking at her parents, Linda felt complex emotions spreading in her chest. The anger and sadness were still there, but she also felt pity for them. "I heard from Carol," Linda changed the subject. "About Mother's health, about Father's company." Robert's shoulders slumped. "It's humiliating. Everything I built over a lifetime. My memory is becoming strange," Helen said in a trembling voice. "I'm scared, Linda." Linda took her mother's hand. As a doctor, she understood how terrifying a dementia diagnosis could be. "I'll refer you to a good neurologist," Linda said. "A colleague at my hospital who specializes in this field." "Thank you," relief appeared in Helen's eyes. "And, Father," Linda turned to Robert. "Regarding the fraud case, one of my patient's fathers is a lawyer. He might be able to help." "That's..." Robert choked on his words. "Thank you." Michael, who had been watching silently until now, finally spoke. "Don't forget about the children. It will take time to regain their trust." "Of course," Robert nodded seriously. "I accept your apology," Linda said quietly. "But it will take time to rebuild trust." She stood up and faced her parents. "And there's one condition. You must face the consequences of your actions head-on. And from now on, become a real family in the true sense." At these words, her parents nodded. A humility Linda had never seen before appeared on Helen's face. Determination shone in Robert's eyes. That night, after her parents left, Linda and Michael talked quietly in the kitchen. Can you really forgive them? Michael asked gently. Linda thought as she drank her tea. Not completely, not right away, but I think we've taken the first step. Michael put his arm around her shoulder. You're such a strong person. I'm not strong, Linda smiled. I just know that family bonds are more important than anything else. Though I didn't learn that from my parents. The sound of the children's laughter could be heard from upstairs. Linda reflected on today's events as she listened to that sound. Rebuilding the relationship with her parents would be a long journey. But today, they had taken the first step. A year later, winter had come to Chicago again. Through the window of Linda's home, fresh snow could be seen accumulated in the garden. In the living room, Emma and Jason were helping decorate the Christmas tree, and Michael was on a ladder attaching a star to the top. Helen, Mama, where should I put this ornament? Jason asked, holding a blue glass ball, addressing his grandmother who was sitting in a rocking chair in the corner of the living room. You can put it wherever you like, my treasure, Helen smiled gently. Many things had changed over the year. Though Helen's dementia had progressed, with regular family support, she had many stable and peaceful days. The treatment from the neurologist Linda had referred, along with a secure environment, had been effective. Robert had succeeded in recovering some of the funds from the fraudster, but he didn't return to his previous wealthy lifestyle. He and his wife had sold their large suburban house and moved to a small condominium just a 10-minute drive from Linda's house. Family dinners every Sunday had become a new tradition, sometimes including Carol's family. I'm going to check on the pie, Linda said as she headed to the kitchen. Helen stood up. I'll help. In the kitchen, the two women began working side by side. This was once an unimaginable scene. That Christmas was my life's biggest regret, Helen said quietly. She was watching Linda take an apple pie out of the oven. But without it, we might not be where we are today, Linda turned and smiled. Life's irony, Helen sat at the table, holding a teacup with her wrinkled hands. Only after losing money and social status did I understand what the real treasure was. It's never too late, Linda squeezed her mother's hand. Most of her former social circle had drifted away, but true friends remained. Robert had begun volunteering at church, and now even gave advice to other elderly people as an exemplary grandfather who successfully rebuilt his relationship with his grandchildren. On sunny days, Helen walked in the neighborhood park with Emma and Jason. She called them my treasures, and expressed a straightforward affection she had never shown before. The doorbell rang, and Carol's family arrived. Ava and Ryan ran to their cousins, and the adults exchanged greetings. Carol had changed too. Her clothing was no longer as extravagant as before, and her attitude had become more humble. At dinner time, Robert gathered everyone and said, "This year, I want to express my gratitude again. To Linda and Michael, and the children, who taught us the true meaning of family." Glasses were raised, and smiles spread around the table. When dessert time came, Emma stood up and said, "Grandma, Grandpa, thank you for becoming part of our family." At these words, tears of gratitude fell from the eyes of the two who had once clung to their definition of family. They had finally understood what true wealth was. Outside the window, snow continued to fall silently, and the Christmas tree lights warmly illuminated the room. Linda looked around at her family and felt a quiet satisfaction. A journey that had begun with pain had transformed into healing and true bonds. This year's Christmas had become a symbol of inclusion, not exclusion. And that was the true meaning of family.